Okay, so here we go. We're going to take a few minutes before we get started so that people have a chance to kind of get settled in. We decided not to do a live recording so that we didn't have to worry about any technology issues today, since it's kind of a sunny day outside here in New York, but we've had thunderstorms rolling through. And since if we're going live and something cuts out, it'll interrupt the flow of the program. So we're going to record it and then we're going to upload it so that you guys can watch that later. So anyways, what we're talking about is right over my shoulder right here. 10xing the or outperforming the market. The market is the national average. And we were talking about Division 1 athletes. They develop at a rate of 2% of the high school athletic population. So 2% of the high school student athletes go on to Division 1 athletics. Our percentage at Titletown Fight Club is over 10x that number. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go Division 1. That doesn't mean that this is about going Division 1. That means that what we're talking about right now is the fact that I'm going to show you kind of behind the curtain, inside the process, so to speak, of what we've been doing for over 2 decades to develop our student athletes to perform in the classroom and on the field at the highest of levels. We always shoot for the top 1% instead of the top 2%. That way you give yourself a little bit of cushion, a little bit of leeway, and you're really trying to focus on developing yourself to be the best that you can be. Not necessarily versus the competition, but eventually you compete against somebody else, and so that's where the comparative analysis comes from. So 10x the market. So over my other shoulder here is a UNC Wilmington hat and a Virginia hat. Those are the two schools that my two oldest kids, Melissa and I, my wife, they're going to. Our daughter Tyla is going to UNC Wilmington to play beach volleyball, and we are from the Northeast. Beach volleyball is a thing here, even though it's probably like a month of the year. Actually, it's like 6 to 8 months, but it gets really cold. And my son Antonio is going to the University of Virginia to wrestle. They also obviously are going to study in school as well, so they've already picked out their majors with entrepreneurship for Antonio and for international business for Tyla. Now that I've kind of told you a little bit of my parenting story, I've been coaching, consulting, and training and mentoring student athletes for over 2 decades. My wife also, and I was a Division 1 athlete in college as well. We have 4 children, and like I said, we've been living this lifestyle for every day of our adult life. And if you know us, then you know that's what we eat, sleep, and breathe, and we love it. And we don't make any apologies about it. And it is definitely the focus of our life. We love spending our time with our family and with the athletes that we train and getting to watch them perform and do what they love to do in the classroom and also athletically. And then after that in their life. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of get started right now. So my background, again, like I said, I was a Division 1 athlete. I came up through a small school, ended up going Division 1 for wrestling, and then afterwards got into coaching. Actually got into coaching while I was in school, and then I met my wife, Melissa, and we decided to go to massage therapy school, and then we decided to move out west because it was more wellness and athletic oriented. Then we decided to move back to the Northeast when we were having kids, because we were closer to family. Along the way, we've done consulting and coaching and training and directing and managing at spas and health clubs. We've also taught for a little bit at the University of Vermont. We taught therapeutic massage, and then we moved back to where we were from originally to be closer to family and to help out there. And then we started a gym here, and before that we were mostly doing consulting over the phone and online, and so it's kind of built up that way, and we've really paid attention along the way, and we've strived along the way to get the best information for our student athletes and then also for our kids, because we've been doing that for almost 2 decades as well. So what today's webinar or seminar is about is giving you, I was going to say let's do a day in the life, but that doesn't really help you as much as giving you an overview of some of the main things that ultimate performers or the top 1% really do. And we've been studying from and blessed by working with some of the most phenomenal people on the planet. And now with YouTube and the internet, you can really tap into some of the greatest minds out there. And most of the stuff is free. I mean, other than having an internet connection. So what we're going to talk about today is taking advantage of what we know, and then when we get to the end, and if you, along the way too, if you don't want to take notes, that's okay. You don't have to take notes. You can shoot me an email at coach@toddkutry.com, and I will forward you the notes probably after this weekend, because we've got a busy few days. Along the way though, I'm going to break down kind of some stories that will help you, tie together what we're talking about in the 11 different kind of examples of some things people focus on. Make sure that you've got a water or a snack with you, so you don't have to get up and walk away unless you really absolutely need to. It's the main focus is helping people who help the student athletes. Now, so that could be a parent. We're mostly focusing on parenting right now, but trainers and coaches and mentors these days often end up doing a little bit of like crossover stuff, where I'm not going to say they're parenting, but there's a lot of like interaction there that's very similar to what a parent would be doing, like as a mentor with a student athlete. And so that happens, and hopefully everybody's okay with that, because that is kind of the job of the trainer and the coach these days, is to help out in many ways with split families and people who don't necessarily have the greatest of role models, or they have a parent or two parents that are working 2-3 jobs at home. So it's a matter of like helping out where you can help out for the greater good of the student athlete. Before we get started, also I'm going to tell you that at the end of the webinar, I'm going to introduce you to something that we're going to be offering as kind of a beta, so the first time offer for for our parents and coaches and trainers, where we used to do this and we've stopped, but we're going to reintroduce this and actually start working with the parents, the coaches, and the trainers that work with the student athletes. And the reason why is, in the beginning, we start off and it seems like we're just working with the student athlete as a trainer and a coach. And in the end, what we're really doing is we're trying to help that student athlete by trying to teach the parents what they need to know to help the students out, to help the athletes out. And it's not just, the things that you'd expect. It's often things that you think you're doing right, but it's not quite right. Sorry about that. Anyways, so we're going to get into that. So we're 8 minutes into this already, and now everybody should be settled. So I'm going to walk you through really quickly our facilities, so you have some sort of idea, at least like what the training center has going on. So we're walking out here. We're closed right now, so nobody else is in here. We're going to do a little backwards walkthrough, but we'll start over here kind of at the wall, and we're going to start the walkthrough. The reason why I bring you out here is the wall has great impact on many of the people that we talk with, that we work with. The reason why is you get to see some of the logos up on the wall, and this is what the kids that come in that are local get to see on a daily basis. Now, I ask you the question, why am I showing you the wall right now? Is it to brag? By the way, that's Antonio's, and that is Tyla's. Also, that's Juliana's. So why do I show you the wall? I don't know. Why do you put stuff up on the refrigerator if you're trying to lose weight that says something like, you're not hungry, you're just bored? Why do we tell our student athletes that they need to choose good friends, that they need to surround themselves by people who are equally committed? And why do we do that? Well, that we did it the same reason why I just showed you the wall. Your environment often will dictate how you develop. And so, with that being said, we're going to jump right in to the first thing we're covering. Number 1, habits. All right, so habits, what do we mean? That's pretty general. So for starters, habits typically take 21 days to form. If you're recreating or you're doing a habit that is taking the place of an old habit, that can take up to 55 days because you're actually replacing a current behavior. So that's an important thing to know. So it's okay, it might be 21 days, but it could be up to 55 days. That's significantly different. Okay? So what are some of these habits that this top 1% have? And this isn't just the student athletes we worked with. These are the CEOs that we know. These are the top performers above and beyond, not just as students or athletes, but people that we know in life. These are the things that we see. These are the things that we've like written down, that we've taken note on, that we've not just theorized or conceptualized, but we actually put into the work of our everyday lives and our students' everyday lives, and it works. So here are some of the habits: meditation, journaling, movement in the morning, movement at night, reading. Those are just some of the basic ones when you start off the day. Oftentimes people will do goal setting too. They'll do brain dumps where they unload everything from their head so they can kind of get clear on where they are, where they're heading. Now, I can tell you right now, here's going to be my story for this first one. My story for the first one is going to be the fact that for me, I do this regularly and I perform at a high level when I do. Now, I stopped doing it for a month just to see what would happen, and I can tell you it was horrible. When I stopped doing my morning routine, I didn't even stop my evening routine, but I mostly stopped my morning routine, and my days were far less functional. I had far less joy and happiness in the day. I didn't get anywhere near as much accomplished. I also didn't feel accomplished too because I was unaware with where I was. I felt like there was a lack of direction, lack of focus. I never felt like I was in a flow state or in the zone the entire month that I didn't do the daily habits. So I think that's pretty significant and that's profound, and that's something that, that immediately just thinking about that, just hearing that, that should be enough to say, okay, like, what are your daily habits? What do you do as a parent, as a trainer, as a coach? And if you start looking at that yourself, then we can actually start looking at it for our student athlete. Keep in mind, they're going to watch you. I have parents all the time that say, I don't work out very often with people. I prefer to kind of do my own thing, which works well with running a gym because I can't really train in the training center while people are here. So I've a few times trained with my kids and a few times trained with Melissa. But if I don't do any training, or if I can't perform the exercises in here that I'm supposed to be able to demonstrate, so if I can't do what I'm telling them to do regularly, consistently, like if I can't do those demos, do you think that they're going to learn as much from me? No. So if in your life you don't do the daily habits and other things like that, your kid or your student athlete, if you're the coach or the trainer, they're going to call your bluff. They're not going to be, oh yeah, we should listen to so-and-so because he's whatever. If you're talking about food and nutrition but you're not healthy, they're not going to listen to you either. So that's the one that we're talking about right there, the daily habits. Now let's jump from that. Let's jump to mindset. Okay? Again, you don't have to take down these notes because we'll come back to the fact that I'll tell you what the email is so you can actually just send me an email if you're looking for the notes on it. So 2, I don't even know if you can see it, but it says mindset. I could write a little bit bigger, I suppose. So mindset. The failure with the mindset is the fact that people misunderstand failure. Let's sign this up a little better. They misunderstand failure. And what do I mean by they misunderstand failure? Okay, well, failure is literally just feedback, okay? It's not fatal, it's not final. But some people look at failure because failure is typically between a particular time frame. So if you had, let's say you had let's say you played 18 holes of golf. Well, from the beginning to the end, you get a score. Now, if you didn't score what you wanted to score, or if you weren't, if you weren't below par, then you might look at that as a failure. All it is feedback from a snapshot, a point in time, of a framework of time. So, and then from that framework, you sit down, you go through, maybe you videoed it and you got an iPad or something like that, you can look at it on, or an iPod, or you got your phone or something. But all that is feedback. Now, here's the thing with the mindset. You've got, Carol Dweck will talk about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Now, this is where parents and coaches really get hung up. And here's how they get hung up. They can't decide like how to have a growth mindset but be honest with the student athlete or themselves often. So this is the really, really important part. And here's what it is. You need to be honest with the athlete about what you're giving them feedback on, but you can be positive about it and you can direct them in a manner that they can take action on the feedback. So it's this is the thing with the growth mindset. It's okay to fail. It's good to fail. I'm not saying you're going into things trying to fail, but you're going into something saying, look, I'm going to try my best, and whatever happens on the other side of that, what's going to happen is I'm going to sit down and I'm going to take stock of where I am, and then I'm going to try to make some corrective actions and put myself in a better position next time to succeed. So that's a growth mindset. That's a mindset going into it that says, like, you'll see at different, especially in college, you see this separation. You see teams and cultures out there with a growth mindset where they go to practice and they play some of the time versus competing and being like really, really like gritty. And like grit's good, don't get me wrong, and it's good to have like to be strong-minded and stuff like that and strong-willed and to be stoic and be Spartan-like, but you also need to have that sense of play, that sense of creativity, and that's the growth mindset, and that's where it comes in. So it's really important to make sure that you understand the difference there, and this is where reading books is helpful, listening to podcasts. There's so many great resources out there to take advantage of. When I talk with a parent, a trainer, or a coach, and I ask them what their favorite podcast is, and they don't have an answer, and then afterwards I'll say, well, just list some that you listen to, and they don't have an answer immediately, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for their student athletes that they work with. That's an uninspired life. If I then later say, okay, well, what name me like one of your most one of the books that most inspired you. What book have you read more than once? Who is one of your favorite authors? If you're not trying to soak up, the greatest possible information out there to help yourself and to help your student athlete, well, you're in the wrong profession, and I'll call parenting a profession, because it's about leadership and love, really. That's leadership, love, and learning. That's what about it sums up being a parent. So if you're parenting, and I know a lot of you don't have time, I get that, I understand it. I'm at the gym 24/7. However, at the same time, you have time to go through and to learn. Like, that is within you, and it's easier than ever. That's why the attention span of kids from the 1980s was 20 seconds, and now it's 7 seconds. Why? Because they can pick up what I'm recording this on, which is a phone, and within like less than 7 seconds, they can get on Google or wherever, any search engine, and they can get an answer to their question. So, that's also the growth mindset. That's like, I want an answer. I want the best answer. I want the right answer. That's why if you're giving the wrong answers, also they're gonna call your bluff. They're gonna know that you're full of it. So you can't bluff kids anymore. Not with your actions and not with your facts. You can't. They joke about the whole like I forget what they call it now, but basically with our current president, often people talk about like their truth or his truth or whatever. But the facts that are like, I don't know if they're made up or they just put a spin on them or whatever. But the point is like everybody kind of has their own reality. But the bottom line is there's facts about certain things that are in stone. So when you say, hey, listen, you have to do it this way because it's the right way, and then a kid like looks things up and you're wrong, you just lost your credibility with that person. And unfortunately, if you've lost your credibility, they may be done listening to you for a while, and then you're going to have to reprove yourself, and that's very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, especially with a kid. Good news is, their attention span is 7 seconds. So bad news is that doesn't mean that they don't hold on to a lot of information, especially if it's something that's going to be useful for them. So mindset, that's, I can think of, like, Dean Karnazes is like a phenomenal person talking about mindset. He's an ultra marathon guy. He's the guy who, like, people said, oh, you can't, run marathons every day, and he does. And then people are like, well, it's not healthy to run over 50 miles, and he runs over 100. So everybody, it's what reality is true to them that gives them inspiration and gives them life. So when you're thinking about that growth mindset, this is where I talk about gratitude, and that's GOAT, the greatest of all time. Have the greatest of all time mindset for yourself that you can have. Ooh, we're raining here a little bit. So attitude, mindset. Okay, so that was the Carol Dweck's growth mindset. Now we're moving on from there. The thing from that you got to take away from it is you have to be honest with a person in a positive way, but understand that learning and growing are the main goals. And if you can learn and grow safely, and consistently and sustainably, you eventually will get to a point where you can't even fathom. I've seen people go from not winning not even one time in an entire year and do that several years in a row, and then all of a sudden go to winning a championship. It's happened. Probably should be on an ESPN 30 for 30, but it literally was somebody had a shift in their brain and they were like, oh, I can do better than this. Boom, and they did. It just happens. All right, next. So the next one we've got is food and nutrition. This is the one we're going to spend the least amount of time on because it's so controversial. I'm not here to fight with you, but at the same time, I'm also here to just be honest with you about stuff. Food and nutrition right here. So we'll talk about Melissa for a second. Melissa decided several months ago she was going to make some changes. And I'm sure people have seen her posting about the changes she's made. And it literally was a shift in how she would conduct herself on a daily basis, and she was consistent with it. And it wasn't a change with anything that we knew. So it wasn't new information. That what it was support, it was follow through, it was accountability, it was the ease of use, it was preparation, it was all of these things. So the main thing, and I'm just going to keep this really simple, and we're going to move on from here because the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, which that's a completely misrepresented quote, but you should check into that at some point. But anyways, so the proof is in the pudding. So with all these things that we're talking about, preparation is absolutely paramount. Now with food and nutrition, think about this. You're going to a travel event. Let's say you're a baseball player and you're a pitcher and you're going to be in front of a ton of scouts. And let's say you throw 88. And 88 might be good enough if you've got movement and you've got other skills to put you at a Division I level. And again, like, we're not glorifying Division I. That's just the highest level in college. So if this was if this was something else, we'd be picking whatever the top is, because you're going to shoot for the top, you're going to shoot for the bottom. So we're talking about the highest level. So if you've gotten away, one of these travel situations, and you're going there, now if you're hydrated and you've eaten healthy, you might hit 88. If you've done what you need to do recovery-wise and you've prepared. However, if you're dehydrated, you can be up to, and this is crazy, but you can be up to 10% below your maximum power outage or output. So that's significant. That is, think about that. That is 8.8 miles an hour. That means you're throwing basically 80, maybe 79. You're not, at that point, you're probably not going to get an offer to be on a team at the Division I level. Okay, so that's significant. Now let's talk about the food. Now the food isn't good either. You've got excitotoxins and stuff like that in food. We're not going to even get into it. But if your system's not functioning at an optimal level, then you're sabotaging yourself. And we'll talk about that later too. Self-sabotage. You just can't just do whatever you want to do. I hear coaches all the time say, it's just let the kid have fun. If you're going to a showcase, you're going there. You got to get real clear on your goals. Yeah, we're playing sports to have fun. We're playing sports also to learn life skills. Okay, let's not forget that. And having fun is a big part of life. But a lot of the people that say we're having fun aren't happy with their jobs. They're not happy with what they do. So if you're not happy with what you do and you're preaching have fun, is that confusing? Do you think somebody's going to listen to you? Are they going to believe you? Do you sound credible? So again, let's think about what you're talking about here. So again, let's get back to what we're talking about, food and nutrition. And when you wake up, you need to brush your teeth. You need to do like your morning routine, whatever. You need to eat within 30 minutes typically. You need to put fuel in your system within 30 minutes. We'll talk about that in a second. Then every 2.5 to 3 hours, you need to have something in your system that's going to help you be sustainable. I usually start my day off with proteins and fats. People used to think fats were the devil. That's not the case. It's things. Everything has a time and place within reason. Then we have, and then you have, like, if you're an athlete, we were talking about athletes. Typically, towards the tail end of your workout, you really need to have protein and carbohydrates in your system. I'm not going to get even into food combinations because that's a whole nother thing. But your body digests and processes food differently. It processes liquids differently than solids, and different solids get processed differently, depending on their makeup, because they have things that the body knows they need to produce to break things down. So when you mix different things, it makes things more difficult. Now, there's plenty of people that'll tell you, you can eat whatever you want, you're fine, your body will deal with it, like it's good. Okay, try that. That's why we have so many problems these days. So again, as a student athlete, you want to make sure that you get the right stuff and make it as easy as possible without it doing damage or taking away from your recovery, because you want to try to have as much energy for your performance and for rebuilding, because you're trying to grow. So that's really, really critical. Now, 2 seconds here on intermittent fasting, because that's a big thing. You'll hear, there's some phenomenal people that are doing it. Pay attention to what they're doing, though, because what they're saying and what you're thinking they're saying aren't the same as what they're doing. So, like, for instance, there's a very, very prominent, I'm not going to say his name, and he's a wonderful person, a great actor who's just incredible, and he shares what he does, and he doesn't mean to do anybody harm, but he's saying, I start fasting at night, like 3 hours before I go to bed, 3 to 4 hours, and then for the first 3 to 4 hours when I wake up, I don't have anything. I don't eat anything, and that's the key. I don't eat anything, okay? He still has shakes. He still has amino acids. He's getting proteins. He's getting fats. He's getting stuff like that. He's just basically not getting carbohydrates, and he's not eating food. Like, he's not eating like an actual solid food. So that's what he's calling intermittent fasting. That's fine. Get real clear on what you're supposed to be doing. Also get real clear on what your goals are and who you're trying to communicate to and what their needs are. So again, that's a second on food and nutrition. So we're going on to the next one. So the next one is going to be for decision making. Okay? When I think of decision making, the first person that comes to mind is Tony Robbins, because he says, in the moments of our decisions, that's when our life takes form. And then it's because when he says you don't really decide until you take that definitive action. So he's talking about decision making, but he's got it lumped together with action, because he doesn't consider a decision just something that you've thought about. It's an action for him. So once you've decided on something, that means you've taken the next action from that point to move towards that direction of whatever decision you made. So that we're going to try to be quick on this one as well. With your decision making, the main thing you got to get clear on is you got to get clear on, what are my goals, and is this decision moving me towards my goals? That's a real simple way to do things. So you have to have clarity of your goals. The next thing that we have to have is, I usually have this, I use this, and Tony talks about this, the rocking chair test. When I'm sitting in my rocking chair later in life, will I regret having made this decision, to move in whatever direction? What if here's the next one. What if I don't do this? What if I don't make this decision? What will happen then? What will I miss out on if I don't make this decision and take next action? Sometimes it's helpful here to talk about Jim Collins's 3 circles, so that you understand what you do the best, what you're passionate about, and then what it is that fuels that for you. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just mentioning that so that that puts that in your head a little bit there for decision making. If it fulfills or feeds or fuels your 3 circles, then it's a good decision. Okay? So, and the better you get at decision making, the better your life will be, because If you do the rest of these other, this one skill and then the other 10 we're talking about, then it's all going to work together and you're going to be doing well. So decision making, people, and then here's the other thing on decision making. If you don't need to make this decision every day, don't. And so this is where we hear people talk about, I think Jay Shetty talks, or who is it? Is it Shetty that talks about this? I've heard it mentioned all over the place, but basically, I know Jim Quick talks about it too. It's where you see, very, very prominent people like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and people like that, Steve Jobs. When he was around, he was seen a lot wearing the same stuff. Why? Was he wearing the same shirt? Oh, he was wearing the same style of shirt, but it was just the one less decision he had to make in the morning. All the better, because then he doesn't have to stand there for 2 seconds and use his brain on something that's not really impactful, that he can't basically like outsource or do in advance. So it's just, it's like, get that done. So it's some people, especially like going back to food and nutrition, tying that in with this, they'll make decisions on things at the beginning of the week. This is what I'm having for the week. I'm cooking it, I'm packaging it, I'm putting it in the freezer, and I'll pull it out on that day. Now I don't have to make that decision anymore. So that's just one more thing as it relates to decision making. And we're going to move on from there. Decision making is really just about, like, does it move you towards your goals? And then do you take action immediately after you made that decision? Moving towards that decision. Now, if you don't do that, then Tony Robbins says you haven't really made a decision. Okay, next one, which fits right in because we were kind of talking about it, is goal setting. Okay? Goal setting. All right, what are we talking about here with goal setting? Clear and trackable is the most important thing that you need to know. Goal setting. I remember seeing an episode, I think it might have been on Flow Wrestling. It was a clip from a while ago. And I always try to get kids to pay attention to whether it's good or bad, because it's always good. It just depends on how they process it. But I believe they did an episode on people who were just achieving at high levels. Obviously, that's what they're always focusing on. So anyways, the episode had Kyle Dake on there from Cornell, who's won 4 national championships, 4 different weight classes, never been done before. Absolutely, like, insane. Something that who knows if it'll ever be done again, just because it's improbable, unlikely. One of the most difficult things you could ever even set out to plan to do. I don't even know if that was what he planned. But he did plan on winning a championship every year. And what he was excellent at was not only goal setting, but also reminding himself and creating an environment where on a daily basis, he repeated that back to himself. I remember in the episode, they showed like a notebook that he had where he basically just wrote down what he was going to do. And he just kept on doing it over and over again. That consistency, that like putting that information into his head and over and over and over. And that repetition, kind of, that was like, that was the drum beat of his life. Like, he was marching to that beat. Like, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. And I am. And the funny thing is, it was clear, it was trackable. If you're going to win a national championship, he didn't get hung up along the way with any of the little, I'm sure he was a little bit frustrated at times if he didn't do as well as he thought he could do. But the bottom line is, like, he wrote it down. He got real clear on his goals. He made sure that, he was taking actions, and he was surrounding himself with things that funneled him all towards that goal. So, he created his own, kind of Russell Brunson, who's another wrestler from Boise State, ClickFunnel. He kind of funneled everything towards that goal. So everything in his life, whatever decision it was like, oh, you don't want to do this? Boom, over here. Oh, back to doing that. So it reminds me of, there was a bro science thing that was funny. I was talking about, like, do you even lift? And everything came back to either you do lift or you don't. And then it was, do you even lift? And then boom, one way or another. It was kind of, it was, a question that was a dichotomy. But anyways, Kyle Dake, so it was phenomenal. He was just really, really clear. So when you're going to do something with goal setting, then what you need to sit down and brainstorm on it. You need to come up with whatever, and we talked about this, we have a program for goal setting, but come up with, however many areas you need to track for goals, and then make sure that it's, again, within your 3 circles, things that are important to you. Most people usually have, like, physical goals, personal goals, financial goals sometimes, academic goals or vocational goals. And then sometimes they'll have thing goals or travel goals or stuff or whatever you want to call that. But then what they'll do is we'll sit down, and it's up to you to come up with those areas, or for your student athlete too. And you should do it yourself. Again, this is a thing where you should be doing it yourself, and then your athlete will see you doing it. And often they'll ask questions, and they'll see the results too. So getting clear and trackable on them, you're going to sit down and you're going to spend like 5 minutes writing down everything in your head as it relates to that area, and then you'll do that in all the areas, and then you come back and then you're going to look at all those things, and you're going to pick maybe a 3-month goal, a 6-month goal, a 1-year goal, a 3-year goal that's within there, and then you're going to pull those out of there, and then you're going to focus on those 3 to 5 areas that is your next 3-month goal. And then we'll talk about this later in the next step, actually talking about the organization of that. So that's one of the things you can do for goal setting. It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. And again, it's about getting really clear. It's not just about, happy-go-lucky, just blowing around and stuff like that. There's very, very few people that operate that way, that are successful, that actually get to where they hope to get. Because here's the other thing. If somebody has a dream, that's a goal, okay? They might not have written down, but if somebody has a dream about something and they hope to do something one day, that's a goal. There's a lot of people say, oh, I don't do goals. Oh, really? What did you want to do when you were a kid? I wanted to be an artist. Okay, that's a goal. So we all have goals whether we realize them or not. It's just some of us are more clear than other people, that's all. So that's goals. So goal setting. Number 6, and this is probably one of the most important things that's overlooked, and that is organization. And this is the most important thing. Organization and execution. Okay? If you've got all these other things up above it going on, then organization and execution is often where people drop the ball. It's where they miss out. It's where something goes wrong that they're supposed to be doing better or more functionally, and they drop the ball, and then that's where this gets lost. Number 6 is often the separator between the elite and the people who are okay or good, or like, wow, they had that one performance, remember that? That was awesome. Yeah, what happened since then? I don't know. Consistency is an issue. Consistency and trust, not with necessarily other people, but oftentimes with themselves. Now, the person that reminds me that I think of as soon as I say organization and execution, if I'm not thinking of my wife, Melissa, the next person I think of, maybe it's similarities in the last name, David Allen, getting things done. He's I know he doesn't like the word guru, but he's the guru of gurus as far as that goes. He talks about collecting, processing, organizing, reviewing, and doing. That's like the 5 steps for him. Collect, process, organize, review, do. I'll spend a minute on that a little bit. And then the main thing that you need to think about with this is organization, execution. The main thing is, what is this? So that's collecting stuff. To get everything, make sure you have everything in your inbox, whatever that is. Have as few inboxes as you have the need for, but as many as that you have a need for. So collect things, then process them. Like once you look at something, you look at it and you wonder, where am I going to put this? What am I going to do with this? And then you need to organize it. You need to have an organizational system set up where let's say you get something in the mail from somebody. Let's say it's a card and it's a happy birthday card. Do you save it? If you don't, that's fine. But you probably have a process for it, so you put it somewhere or whatever. Maybe you even have a file folder for it. David Allen has I'm not going to get too much into this because he goes way, way into this, and he's phenomenal, and I'll just let him do his thing. But I would definitely recommend looking into David's stuff, because then you review it and then you do it. But the thing is, this is kind of about time and space management too. That's what organization execution is about. So if I'm now with a phone, it kind of messes people up nowadays because you can do almost anything from anywhere. But if I'm here at the gym and I'm supposed to be, I'm at the training center, I'm supposed to be training people, I can respond from time to time with text. If somebody has an emergency, they can call and I'll answer, but I'll try to be quick because I'm really supposed to be focusing on the training that's going on here. Now, our college athletes and athletes that we work with that are from somewhere else, that I do online stuff with, or like with these boot camps, I'll get that done ahead of time, and then I'll respond in times when it's okay. Or if I have to run errands, or if you have to go and you have to go do something, like if I have to go to the grocery store, I have to plan that. I can't buy stuff at the grocery store when I'm not there. Although nowadays, again, because of delivery and stuff like that, you can kind of be not very organized, and things can still kind of like work out. But it's not the most efficient way to go about things. So when we talk about this and we're thinking about David Allen, the most important thing to think about is like collect, process, organize, review, do, and then, and this is most important, next action. Get real clear on the next action. Let's say you say, I want to be a Division I athlete. Okay, well that's great. That's a goal. Now you got to break that into a project, and then you got to break that project down into that next action. So you got to way off in the distance, but then you got to pull that to what's the next step in front of you. And so that's next action. So like, for instance, the other day I get the car fixed, and I didn't know what was wrong with it, so I didn't know if I wanted to waste the time to go out and drive around and see if I knew what was wrong with it, so then I kind of give the mechanic a heads up as to what I thought it was, or if I'd just be like, I'll make an appointment, go drop it off, whatever. But then I realized, I forgot where I put that number. Is it in my phone? I think it's in my phone. I didn't have my phone with me, so then the next action was I got to get my phone. The next action wasn't call the person, it was get my phone, because I can't call them without getting my phone. Now it sounds stupid, but like that's the next action, is to get the phone. Or if I knew what the phone number was, I could use the phone number and borrow somebody else's phone and call and make an appointment. But the next one is to get a phone. So I had to wait until I had to get home to get my phone. So again, like that takes it into next action. Now from there, let's jump to the next one, because I don't want to spend too much time on it. We're going to go through this one kind of quicker than others, but this is practice and training. All right, practice and training. This comes back to the growth mindset. Okay, the growth mindset. For practice and training, the growth mindset really comes into play. So if you're really clear on your goals, if you're doing, if your daily habits are exceptional, if your mindset's a growth mindset, your food and nutrition's where it needs to be, you're good at making decisions, and you're organized and you're executing. Practice and training comes down to it's planned out. There might be some impromptu stuff, but it's planned out for the most part. You need to get real clear on why you're there. Each training session is different. Each practice session is different. You need to make sure you're not sabotaging yourself going into it like ill-prepared, whether it's food or nutrition-wise, or you didn't get enough sleep, or you didn't get the therapy you needed, or you're not in the right mindset to step in there and do stuff. When you step into the practice room or the training room, you need to put your mind in the moment, okay, which is very difficult to do. You might have to do a brain dump on a sheet of paper before you get in there to get stuff out of there so you can really focus. And that's where like really focused practice or training doesn't have to take very long. This is where a lot of people overtrain and overdo it, and that's like good to create mental toughness, but it's not necessarily always good for growth, especially sustainable growth and healthy growth. So it needs to be consistent. But then the other thing is, and we talked about this earlier, film review. The greatest performers, for the most part, always review some film. And getting real clear on how to review film is important too. You have people that are, you're not just looking for the negative, you're looking for the positive too. What does that mean? What does that mean you're looking for the positive? So if we go back to the whole 3 circles things that we talked about in decision making, we're talking about Jim Collins, like knowing what you do the best at, what you're passionate about, and then what fuels that. So what situations do you get to where you're really successful? What situations do you get to in games or matches or competition where you're not as successful? And then, play around with thinking like, how could I get better at that? How could this person beat me? How could I take one of my weaknesses and make it a strength, because I can draw somebody, lure them into this situation that they think that I'm not good at, and then all of a sudden I've got tactics and techniques that I can employ to take advantage of that. So what are some key performance indicators that I can track to make sure that at least like I can feel good that I'm making progress every practice? And now you don't have a lot of them, but 1 to 3 of them. It could be like, how many shots did I take? How many shots did I finish? If it's wrestling, if it's football, and maybe it's how many blocks did I finish, or how many people did I make miss me when I was running with the ball. So there's, if it's, let's say it's soccer, it's how long was I able to possess the ball? How many times were people able to get like a foot on the ball and get it from me? How many people got past me? There's always something that you can that you can track, a key performance indicator. And then you have to have goals for yourself to improve. You need to have goals for each individual practice. You need to take care of yourself. You need to prepare. You need to recover. You need therapy. So that's practice and training. Practice and training. Person I think of like back when we used to do like adventure racing training for people. And I remember going out there one of the days, and I was excited about going out there to do this training, and it was a long kayak, and it was hard. It was probably one of the harder things I've done, which is funny because the other person, I'm sure, didn't think it was hard, but it was hard for me. But if I wasn't excited about it, if I wasn't looking forward to it, it would have been brutal. I don't know if I could have survived. I probably would have quit. So that's an important thing to think about. Like, I think of practice and training. Remember that time that I convinced myself that it was going to be fun, and maybe it was going to be so fun. It was at first, but the conditions weren't great. So, again, like, I can't control the conditions, but I can control the internal conditions. So practice and training, a lot of it just comes down to the mind. The next one, rest and recovery. Rest and recovery we could spend forever on. I'm not going to get, again, too much into all these because we have to go through it, and I respect your time, and I know as a parent, trainer, and a coach, you don't have a lot of it. I don't have a lot of it. So we need to try to, this is kind of a jumping off point of like where you can start a conversation. So you're trying to get as much information in a short amount of time as possible. Rest and recovery. Now, when I think about rest and recovery, I think about one of the athletes. I'm not going to mention his name, but he got hurt in the middle of a season, and they wanted him to take a redshirt year, or they kind of wanted him to change what he was doing, and he just decided he was going to stick with it, and he was going to prove that he's good enough to succeed in that situation, any situation. He came back from that, and he finished number one in the country that year, and it's a phenomenal story. It could have been on ESPN easily. It was a situation where he'll forever be able to draw back upon that year that he overcame a situation that most people wouldn't have even been able to finish the season, or even maybe finish that month, and instead he became a national champion. And that's, I don't want to mention his name because I don't want to make him feel uncomfortable. I don't think he's uncomfortable because he tells the story all the time. But this is also a section where we're talking about technology. We got the Whoop, you got Fitbit, you got all these other tracking devices. You should use them, but only use them if you're going to actually use the information and you're going to be honest with yourself about the information. We get some of our athletes from time to time be like, "Oh, my Whoop fell asleep or something, or the battery went dead on it," and that happens sometimes. But sometimes maybe that happens conveniently when you didn't go to bed on time, or you weren't rested and recovered to the best of your ability. So you don't want that information to get back to your trainer, your coach, or yourself. So you kind of sabotage yourself by saying that it didn't work. But sometimes it doesn't. But again, only use those if you're going to actually utilize that information and try to share that with your trainer and your coach. If you're not rested or recovered properly, and it's just kind of like maybe you had a hard day or whatever, and then you go hard again, you're all the more like closer to injury and then not being rested or recovered, and then or sick or illness. So use it. Some of that's outside of your control, but you can share that with the coach, and what they do with it is up to them. But you can, you be honest about that. And if you're a parent, you can kind of keep track of that, and you can try to not that the kids are going to listen to you, but you can at least say, it looks like you need a little bit more sleep. Pre and post workout care is super important. Is you got to get the food and nutrition that you need in order to recover. You just can't recover without carbohydrates after a training session, especially if it's hard. You're athletes, so I'm not saying to load up on carbs, but you definitely need to embrace that and be aware of the fact that that's a real thing. Massage therapy is super helpful. I think there's this statistic somewhere that's an hour of massage is worth almost 4 hours of rest, so that's monstrous. Working on your meditation and going through breath work, box breathing. There's also the 1-4-2, and there's a bunch of other breathing techniques that are really great out there. Getting into them is really critical, and making sure that you do your best with making sure that you're consistent with it too. I mean, if you're not going to be consistent with it, what's the point? Number 9, we've got internal and external communication. Now, this one is one that's so misunderstood, and it's such a big thing that I can't even get into just how important it is, because the internal and external communication is all about what you're saying to yourself, how you're saying it to yourself, how you're communicating to other people, what you're communicating to other people, and knowing how you're talking to yourself, knowing what you're saying and when you're saying it. And self-talk is so important because you talk with yourself more than you talk with anybody else. And then the way that you talk with yourself also is the way that you carry yourself, and then people see the way that you kind of carry yourself, and then they interpret that with the way that they think that you are. And maybe they misunderstand your body language too. So it's really important that you really delve into this, especially if you haven't committed already to a school or program. Because if you haven't committed to a school or a program, then what ends up happening here is somebody might think that you don't have the self-confidence to actually perform at that level, which is really, really, really not a good thing. You got to get clear with what message you're sending out. You got to understand that pre-performance rituals are really important. Like if you watch a batter, like they'll brush off their shoulders or something before they go up there. That ritual gets them into a place where they can perform. That's an internal communication to themselves, that they're ready to take action. And keep in mind, your actions speak louder than your words. So your words are really important, but what you do ends up being the communication that comes across to other people. Also understand that the things that you repeatedly say to yourself have huge impact on yourself. So those are those mantras. Then you have journaling, and you have those brain dumps that we talk about. Visualizing success. This is probably one of the most important things that I'll say is if you can find somebody out there that plays the sport that you do, that they're play a similar position, or they look like you and they perform like you, and you can kind of model them or watch them play and compete at the highest level, that is one of the most impactful things that you can do for yourself to help yourself get to that highest level. That visualization is enormous. So we're going to jump on to number 10 here. Number 9, the person that I think about is Dan Millman from The Peaceful Warrior. But again, keeping track of your time, and I don't want to keep you too long and really take away more than you have time for. So attitude. Wayne Dyer is the guy I think of all the time with attitude. Attitude of gratitude, he always says. This is where I get gratitude from too. Greatest of all time attitude. Appreciation, focus, thoughts become things, law of attraction, mind your thoughts because, they direct you in life. And then being clear on also, the books and the videos and the things that you have in your environment or that your athlete does and the way you surround. This is why, people laugh at me, but I tell them, to watch a scary movie, you're putting that in your mind. Why would you want to put something negative in your mind? People say, well, to relax or because it's fun or because it's exciting. Well, that's great, but you just poisoned your mind. And I know that's probably an overstatement, but if you're reading books for pleasure, why don't you read books that bring pleasure or that they teach you how to bring pleasure? It's really, really important to understand how you are caring for yourself, because if you're not paying attention to what you're putting in, whether it's food or nutrition or rest or recovery, and then you put thoughts in there and they're not helpful, that is really, really bad. And so again, the stuff that you put in your brain or that you put in your student athlete's brain, and they're paying attention to what you're watching too and what you're listening to and what you pay attention to. And if you're sarcastic, that's, it's very unclear communication. That takes us back to number 9, that communication that's sarcastic. You're not really saying what you mean, and it's confusing. And so just try to be real clear on things. Now we're going to get to number 11 here really quick. And number 11 is going to be delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is about that stoicism, that Spartan-like attitude that, people have instant gratification all the time now because of the cell phone. If they want something, they can find that out. That messes with stick-to-itiveness and consistency, and they don't have to have, they don't have to put any sweat equity into anything anymore, so people don't understand necessarily or value some things. So this is the part where it's literally hey, can I be more stoic? Like Marcus Aurelius, Ryan Holiday talks about it all the time. Tim Ferriss talks about it all the time. Joe DeSena talks about it all the time with Spartan Race. Can you delay gratification? If you can delay gratification, then you can give yourself an opportunity to maybe overcome some of those obstacles and to understand that you're eventually going to get there, but not today. And I think there was a conversation, I'm not sure who had it. Might have been Tony Robbins, but he had it with a prisoner of war, and General Stockdale. I think Jim Collins had this conversation with him, and it was, I'm gonna succeed, but it was, I'm gonna get out of this prison camp, but not today, not necessarily by the next holiday, maybe not this year, but I am eventually gonna get out, and when I do, you get the idea. So he delayed gratification, was really clear with himself on the fact that he was going to eventually succeed, but just not right now. Because the person who's, optimistic in like a foolish way can set themselves up for failure, because eventually that wears away on you and you start to think, is this really going to happen? Or have I been lying to myself? So when you're trying to talk with your student athlete as it relates to that, it's really, really important that you understand, what you're talking about with them. And delayed gratification is huge. So that takes us through all 11: habits, mindset, food, nutrition, decision making, goal setting, organization, execution, practice and training, rest and recovery, internal and external communication, attitude, and delayed gratification. So now what I'm going to tell you about is, I know that was helpful. If you're listening, we'll give you the notes and you'll be all set on that and get you going. Like I said, we 10x the market on getting people to that highest level, and we have for over 2 decades. The reason why I'm bringing that back to your attention is we've been there, done that, and we can walk you through the process. And since we don't get to work with parents as much, and of the student athletes, we don't get to work with the coaches or trainers as much, except for the ones at college. So what this is about like we're going to do a boot camp. We're gonna do, this one's going to be in beta. So we're only going to accept a certain number of people for it, because we're going to kind of walk through it. It's going to be 8 weeks. We're going to go through 8 group coaching calls. We're going to do an individual coaching call at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the boot camp for each one of you. We're going to go through these 11 steps. We're going to get it all set up. We're going to make sure that we walk you through the process. We're going to go through, do an assessment with you. You're also going to get a plan too. Now these plans, usually we do for $500 just for the plan. So the entire boot camp is going to be $497. So like just getting the plan alone pays for itself, and then just consider the rest of the stuff free. Then also we're going to have some competitions along the way and challenges where you can get like t-shirts and stuff as little fun rewards and awards. But the main concept is to bring you up to a level where you can understand how to perform at that level yourself, from what we've learned and from what we've seen and from what we've done. And then you can also then carry that over with your student athlete. Whether you're the parent or the coach or the trainer, we're going to walk you through an 8-week process where when we start, we'll be starting in a week, where we start in September, we will be going through all the things that you need to know. And you'll actually have a plan, a recipe, a playbook. You'll have the formula. You'll know where you stand. You'll know what you need to do. You'll know, and we'll have on these coaching calls, not just individually, but the group coaching calls, we'll answer these questions where here's a specific situation that I had and a problem that I had with a specific situation, and this is what we need to do about it. And then we can tell you, oh, well, here's what we've done, here's what's been successful or the most successful, and here's what you need to do about it. So again, the thing is, you're going to have a community to support you. You're going to have myself to support you and to answer your questions. You're going to have your plan. We're going to adjust that plan as much as we need to. No more than necessary, but as much as we need to, so you can get yourself to where you want to be, so that you can support your athlete the way that you should, and make sure that you don't make the mistakes that we've made, and do a better job to help them sustainably grow and get to the place that they can get to. Sorry about that. Get to the place that they can get to, so that you give them the best opportunity to be successful at whatever level they want to. And that's the most important thing about parenting. Again, it's about that leadership, it's about the love, it's about the learning, and about listening. And so you're only going to get so many times to go through this whole parenting thing or coaching thing or training thing. So the more information you can get from somebody who's already been doing it forever, the better. So again, here's the offer is $497 for an 8-week program, where the price is going to go up to probably about $2,500 when we actually release this the second time. So you're getting in at a fifth of the cost. And not to mention we're delivering way over that anyhow. It's a 10x value on top of a 10x value. So it's toddkutry.com, and it's coach@toddkutry.com. All you have to do is click on the link on here to sign up. If you have any problems, feel free to reach me. I look forward to getting started with you and helping you with your student athlete. Have a great day.